The Kealing-Owen Child Labor Act.
During the Gilded Age, 1870 to 1920, millions of immigrants flooded the United States. This excessive population explosion created an economic crisis in many major cities like New York. Jobs were very abundant, but the pay was really low. Many families were forced to have children work in disgusting and dangerous industrial working conditions. Deaths due to child labor became an average thing by the 1900s. 1.75 million kids had passed. In 1908, the Kealing-Owen group came together to make a bill to stop child labor. After seeing that in 1900 alone, there were 2 million kids working in mills and factories. They knew they had to take their bill to the Supreme Court, but didn't know how to get the votes. Because of this, they ordered Lewis Lyon, a photographer in the area, to photograph factories that used child labor. Some pictures were of kids as little as 4 years old, while others were kids using machines 10 times their size. After the photographs were taken, they would send the photos out to big newspapers to show. These pictures made an impact on a lot of people, and soon they had enough votes to pass the bill. In 1916, the Supreme Court passed the Keating-Owen bill, stating that any company that employed a person under 14, productions would stop being produced, and that a 14 to 16-year-old couldn't work at night or more than 8 hours in a day. The Keating-Owen Child Labor Act of 1916, also known as the Wicks Bill, was the first in a series of child labor laws aimed to protect children. In reality, it caused even more economic hardships for families struggling in poverty. It was really good when the Supreme Court ruled it to be too extreme and ended the act in 1918. Although it was good that our system chose to get rid of this law, President Wilson at the time hoped it would be a success, since one of his main purposes was to improve our country by approving laws for environmental effects, suffrages, and movements. But the Congress simply couldn't help the needs of families who couldn't survive due to their kids not being able to help pay their bills. In addition, some big companies that were necessities such as food and oil and etc. had to raise prices because manufacturing the products with a limited amount of workers equals less product, so they had to increase due to the shortage.
Even though this act was proven to be too extreme, some researchers think it wasn't a good idea when they closed this law.
Mostly because Keating-Owens had predicted that it was going to lead to some poverty. This is why they tried to enforce this law. When the family numbers were dying down to around 6 people in every family, they enforced it, hoping eventually the poverty would fade out around the 1930s. But this prediction was just not reliable because there could be another economic explosion in 14 years. One little thing like a crash of supplies could leave even more families in poverty, and they were already vulnerable due to the Keating-Owens meaning either way families would end up on the streets.
In the 20th century, we all know that we as citizens have to go to school till we're 16, but back then, those were not the rules. Most kids in the factory had only known how to work a machine, which is just pressing buttons, and since those kids had one easy job for them to work a machine, no knowledge was needed. They didn't need to go to school, but after the Keating-Owen Act, about 1 million of them were put into the world with no knowledge of anything academically.
Deprived of the life-giving labor which was so very beneficial to them, mentally and physically, doubtless their muscular little bodies are wasting away, and the once eager young minds have crumbled into mental and moral ruin.
What this quote is saying is that now they have no shot to live, their brain created too much, and physically. They will never be the same, and this was all for a job.
This was all for a job, and the Keating-Owens Act took away their whole life because they would sleep, eat, then work, and repeat again. It was all the same since they were 5.
Another thing you could say is that they never learned to fix their brain. So you know you're supposed to do the same thing over and over again. It isn't healthy, and soon that's all they're going to be able to know. This even affected the parents due to them having to get double shifts due to their kids being unable to work. Sometimes they would work 24 hours a day. One of the workers at a factory was still examined after dying and had a sprained ankle that was 10 months untreated, but was still forced to work. This was to support their kids.
Some parents didn't even keep their kids. They just let them survive on their own. And since everyone at the time was poor, no one cared for them. because they had barely enough money to buy food after inflation. Soon the government had thousands of kids on the street, so most kids started doing street trades. But this exposed kids to moral dangers that can be even more dangerous than any machine that they were operating. There were even flyers exposing these moral dangers to hopefully take down Kealing-Owen.
Today is 30% of Americans, but back then it was 50% before the Counting-Owen. In the year 1910 to 1920, after the Counting-Owen, in only a year, the poverty rose to 70%. This was in history seen to be one of the highest incline of poverty in such a short amount of time. Chicago had a big effect on banning child labor, which included Chicago helping Kealing-Owen get passed. And when the Kealing-Owen was disclosed, Chicago went an extra mile by helping pass other strong child labor acts, while helping kids who suffer from these acts and were struck by poverty find a home. The Kealing-Owen, even though bringing good intentions, overall was not good for a country's well-being, due to families being on the streets and big companies having to raise prices of products due to the shortage of staff.
But even though the Kealing-Owen Act was bad, it was a jumpstart to many other acts that were stronger and more impactful.